So I'm going to start off by cutting the 2x6 for the tabletop to length. Okay, so I want to take a moment and discuss about end grain. When you're doing your tabletops and you're figuring out your orientation on the top on what looks best, a lot of the times you tend to forget about the end grain, and that's a big, huge factor that you should pay attention to. The reason why is if you look at the bottom, I don't know if you can see it or not, but if you look at the end grain here, it's going in this direction. On this one, it's going on this direction, which is good. That's what you want. On this one, it's going this way. On this one here, it's going in the same direction as the board beside it, which is not good. And the reason for that is that the humidity in a room is going to put a lot of stress on these boards if they're going in the same direction. And when it does that, it tends to want to cup. So to avoid that, you want it one direction this way, the other direction in this way, and you want all the boards to follow the same. So what happens now is it relieves the stress evenly across the whole board. And that makes a big key factor in climate change, whether it's the air conditioning or the sun or it's damp outside. The humidity in each room puts a lot of stress on all furniture. So when you have the grains going in opposite direction, if you stagger them, it relieves the stress across the whole board, and that's what you want. So that's something to keep in mind when you do your tabletops. Now that I have my top all orientated in the direction that I want and I'm happy with it, I'm going to flip them upside down. And here I'm marking out for my dominoes. Now I usually use biscuit joints for the center, but I decided to go with dominoes on the whole glue up. Something different. Here I'm going to glue up the dominoes on the ends first, then I will glue the dominoes in the center, and then I'll come back to the ends and glue the breadboards. I let it sit overnight. I'm going to take the clamps off, and then later on I will cut the ends with my track saw. This is the center post of the frame. Now that it's sat overnight, I'm going to trim the one side down on the joiner, then bring it over to the table saw and cut it to size. Now I'm going to mark out for my mortise and tenon for the center, and this is going to be the center board on the bottom. And I'm going to hog it out with my dado blade, and then there's going to be a second glue up on these as well. And you'll see later on in the video what I mean. Now I'm doing the glue up for the top and the bottom of the base. So there's 4 sets in total. Now this is the second glue up on the center of the base. You can do this in one glue up, but then that center starts to move around on you, so I find it's more accurate if I just do it in separate glue ups. So here I'm gluing the top half of the base. And here I am trimming it down to size. Now for the bottom of the base, I'm going to round off the corners, and I'm just going to use a paint can. It's basically a 1 quart. Square it up on the ends and just draw a pencil for the curve. And I will cut this out on the bandsaw. Then I'm going to use a orbital sander to just round off the edges and get it all cleaned up. Now I'm going to take a 2x6, cut 3/4 of an inch off, and that is going to be the feet of the base. And I will be cutting 4 of these. Then I'm going to put a 35-degree bevel on 3 sides of each board. here I'm going to glue and pin the boards in place. And I'm going to use my square to just square everything off before I pin it in place. Now I'm going to run a 2 1/4 inch board all the way to the bottom of the tabletop. And here I'm mitering a 45-degree angle on the top of the frame. And I will sand that with the sander. Now I'm hogging out for the 2x4s that are going to sit on top of the frame, and that's what's going to screw to the top of the tabletop. And I will cut it out on each end with the table saw. Now that it has dried up, I'm going to mark center to center, and I will hog out the center point for the levelers at the bottom of the feet. And I'm going to countersink them level, and if they need to be used, then you just unscrew them out. And I will drill these on the drill press. And I will be using a Forstner bit. I'm going to drill a 3/16 hole and countersink the washer nut into place. And now I'm going to screw on the leveler. Now I'm going to start to mark out and cut in for my dominoes for the assembly of the table base. And I will do this to all the parts before I start assembly. Now I'm starting to cut for the center board on the bottom, and this is the tenon that I'm cutting out. I'm going to take a file and just clean up the corners so they're not sharp, and that makes it easy for assembly. Giving one last sand on the tabletop before I stain it. And here I'm going to start the assembly of the table base. Now as I'm clamping it down, I'm going to check for square, and I will use the clamps accordingly to adjust it where it needs to be adjusted. And this will sit overnight. So now I'm going to use a Forstner bit, and I'm going to drill a hole in the center on each side, and this is, I'm going to use a 1-inch dowel, and I'm going to glue a 1-inch dowel piece to hold, and that's what's going to hold the center of that board. So it's drilled right through the tenon. Here I'm marking it out and going to cut the dowels for each side. And then I will follow that by sanding it flush. And here I'm using early American stain. I'm putting 1 coat. So I just brush it on with a brush and wipe it with the rag. And I do that almost back to back. I do a small piece and wipe. That way it really brings out the grain. I don't let it sit on there too long. Here I'm getting ready to spray a sand and sealer, and I'm going to put 1 generous coat, and then I will sand it with 220 in about an hour or 2. And this is a Gemini product. Here I'm spraying 3 coats of pre-cat lacquer, and I'm putting a coat every 15 minutes. This is part 1 of 3. There's part 2 is going to be a bench, and part 3 is 2 chairs. And this is the finished product. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and I will see you on part 2 build. Thanks for watching.